Hey guys, today I'm doing my first ever lyrics breakdown video where I want to go really in depth into K-pop song lyrics and explain every little bit of it. You know, the grammar structures, vocabulary, just down to every detail so you can see how they go from the Korean to the English translation and just exactly the process of how that happened. Really hope this will be helpful. Let's hop right in. Alright, let's break down some of the lyrics from the chorus of Spring Day by BTS. Looking at the title really quick, we have 봄날. 봄 is spring, 날 is day, very straightforward. Alright, hopping into the lyrics. First line you'll hear is 눈꽃이 떨어져요. So the word 눈꽃 is snowflake or snowflakes. Korean isn't very particular about plurals a lot of the time, so this word itself is enough to mean snowflakes, plural. So 눈 by itself is snow, and 꽃 by itself is flower. And when you put snow flower together, you can see how that would look like a snowflake, so that's where the word comes from. Kind of cute. Alright, then we have E, which is the subject marking particle. So we know now that snow is the subject of the sentence. Snow is the one doing the action, and the action we have here. 떨어지다 means to fall. And then if we conjugate that into basic present polite, you get 떨어져요. Or fall. Right, depending on the conjugation, but in Korean, you don't really have to conjugate in the same way you would in English. Right, so altogether, what you get is snowflakes fall. So far, so good. Second part of this line. 또 조금씩 멀어져요. So 또 can have a few different meanings. In this case, I would say and is the closest. It could also mean also, again, things like that. But here we're gonna stick with and. 조금씩. So let's break that down. 조금, this word by itself, means a little bit. And then 씩, it's kind of explaining the way that a little bit is happening, right? Each are at a time. So if you wanted to say something like one at a time, for example, you would say 하나, which is one, 씩, 하나씩 would be one at a time. So when you have 조금씩, it's a little bit at a time. And if it's a little bit at a time, that means it's little by little. Something is happening slowly, bit by bit. All right, now we're moving on to this last bit, 멀어져요. We're going to start with this basic adjective. And remember, adjectives in Korean are describing verbs. So we have 멀다, which means far, simply to be far. When you conjugate an adjective and add 지다 on the end of it, it signifies to become. So you're turning an adjective into a verb by our English definition, right? So if we combine these two together, you get 멀어지다, to become further, to get further away. So this describing verb, so we would say in Korean, turns into an action verb. And then again, we're going to conjugate it into present polite, which leaves you with 멀어져요, gets further away, or get further away. Now if we combine that and clean it up a little bit, we get and little by little grow further away. I replaced the word grow just to make it a little more natural in English. So now if we combine these together, snowflakes fall and little by little grow further away. This isn't complete yet. Later on I'm going to show you the lyrics a little bit more fine-tuned to sound natural in English, but for now we're going to stick to a pretty direct translation with this blue. The next line is 보고 싶다 repeated a few times, which just means I miss you. 보고 싶다. I figured you're probably already familiar with that, so we're gonna skip to the next line after that. 얼마나 기다려야. 얼마나, how long or how much. 기다리다, to wait. Now if we add this ending, the conjugation, and then ya means must or need to in order to achieve an outcome. So if you put these two together, right, we're gonna add this onto 기다리다. You're gonna get 기다려야, need to wait, right? So we have how long, need to wait. To make it sound a little nicer, how long must I wait? The I is implied because a lot of times in Korean the subject is omitted because it's kind of obvious that they're talking about themselves in this situation. So we're just going to stick that in there. And then the next line after that, 또 몇 밤을 더 세워야. 또 again, same function as it was over here. 몇 is how many, 밤, night, and again, plurality not super finicky in Korean, so you could say nights just using the word 밤. Right, so this is an object marking particle. So we know that the subject is going to be doing something to nights. And again, the subject is omitted, but we're going to assume it's I based on what we have here. It's going to carry over. But we'll get there. 더 means more. Then this verb 세우다 means to stay up all night. Yeah, they have a word specifically with this meaning implied. This verb does have a couple other similar meanings, but in this case, stay up all night. Then you can see we have a repeat of grammar, right? So again, we're adding this must, need to ending to achieve a certain outcome. So we combine those together into 세워야, need to stay up. So if we put all this together, we get and how many nights, sorry, how many more nights, I just realized my own mistake, I forgot to write the word more, and how many more nights must I stay awake, or stay up. I just thought awake sounded a little bit more poetic, but this again, not the final step yet, this is just the direct translation. Alright, now hopping into the next line, we have 널 보게 될까, starting with 너, which is you, and then we have this 를 here, which is the object marker, and yes, normally it would be 를, like this, but a lot of the times you can kind of shorten it, so instead of having to write 2 characters, you can just take this and kind of throw one of the videos under here, and you get 널. So you as the object of the sentence is 널. Next we have the verb 보다, to see. Then we have this sentence ending right here, 게 되다, which means to end up. Alright, so if we add that onto the verb 보다 and combine them together, you get 보게 되다, which means to end up seeing. And now there's one more step to get to 보게 될까, which is this ending 을까. Right, this is a question ending, and the meaning is something along the lines of, do you think? You don't necessarily actually have to translate it fully into do you think every time you use it, but it's kind of just the nuance. So if you combine these 3 together, 보게 될까, basically you get a question, something along the lines of, will end up seeing, question mark. So obviously it's going to need a little more than that in English. And I would consider this future informal because there's no you on the end here or any other formal ending, it just ends in 될까. And I say future tense because typically when you have did in the bottom here, when you have a verb ending, that implies future tense. And with a question like this, you can kind of think of it as you're kind of asking it in a hypothetical situation, right? And if something is hypothetical, it hasn't actually happened yet. So you can think of it as future tense. And so now if we combine all this together, we end up with, will I end up seeing you? I, again, is implied, the subject's omitted, but we know very clearly now, as they've told us, you, who we may end up seeing. So will I end up seeing you? But the reason that I've transformed it a little bit further here, one line down, is because this is actually a continuation of the last couple lines of the song. We started here with, how long must I wait? And remember the part about an outcome I mentioned, right? This grammar structure right here implies that you need to do something in order for an outcome to happen. We don't have an outcome yet, right? How long must I wait? And how many nights must I stay awake for what, right? To end up seeing you, right? It goes together. So if you imagine this as one sentence, how long do I need to wait in order to end up seeing you? And you could connect it this way as well, and with that one as well, but we'll get there. And how many more nights must I stay up to end up seeing you again? But again, there's an even more natural way to say this in English, which we'll get to, not the final step. All right, and finally, we're going to work our way down here to the last line I have today, which is 만나게 될까? Similar concept, right? 만나다, to meet. 게 되다, again, to end up, right? So 만나게 되다 would be to end up meeting. This 을까 question ending once again. Do you think 만나게 될까? We'll end up meeting, question mark. Do you think we'll end up meeting? Again, future informal for the exact same reasons I mentioned above. This time I put we in the subject just because we don't have you here. If we had you, then it would be obvious that will I end up meeting you? But here it's just to meet, which could technically go either way. I think they only did that because it had to, it's song lyrics, so it has to have a certain number of syllables to match. And so I guess in theory it could either be meet you or we meet. Either way, really, it kind of means the same thing regardless, right? Same concept. And just like last time, I transformed a little bit to be the end of a sentence, right? For us to end up meeting. Again, right? How long must I wait for us to end up meeting, and how many nights must I stay awake for us to end up meeting? So now that we have some pretty direct translations that still sound a little bit unnatural, let's see an example of a more colloquial translation. So what you're seeing here might look familiar to you. It is a screenshot from colorcodedlyrics.com, my go-to from 2016 to now. I love this website for K-pop song translations. Let's see how the sentences I came up with translate to what they have here. So they also got snowflakes are falling from the first line. For the second line, they have getting further away, which does sound a little bit more natural in English than little by little growing further away. Or at least it sounds more concise. Something that can be said more concisely in Korean ends up being a little more wordy in English, so they translated to this, which it is missing a little bit of the nuance, but it gets the point across and sounds a little cleaner, so it makes sense why they did that. Technically, this only really covers the 벌어져요 part at the end here, but again, it works. All right, next line. How much more do I have to wait? Yes, the word more isn't listed there the way it is in the line below. You have the word 더, like clearly there, but it's not necessarily like an incorrect thing to assume. How long do I have to wait? How much longer do I have to wait? Same difference, right? And they chose to use the word much instead of how long. But again, sounds fine in English and gets the point across just fine. How many more nights do I have to stay up? That I think is pretty consistent. And here's the part where I really think there's a little more of a difference, where it sounds a lot more natural the way they wrote it. Until I can see you, until I can meet you, right? Instead of saying to end up seeing you, or for us to end up meeting. Sounds a little awkward in English, right? So I think the way that they translated here, until I can see you, even though technically the word until isn't in there, I think it does sound better in English in general, so it's not something I can really complain about. You can see here how the same kind of thing happens where these lines connect. How much more do I have to wait? How many more days do I have to stay up until I can see you, until I can meet you? The lines are connected. You start with an action and then it leads to an outcome. Or in this case, a hypothetical outcome that they're hoping will happen. Alright, that was a brief part of the Spring Day chorus. It takes quite a long time to cover a few very short lines, but I wanted to go really in-depth, in detail, and really explain all the Korean down to like every little bit. So I think it's well worth it, and hopefully this was helpful. If you have any other requests, feel free to leave them below. I do have a few queued up that I'm planning to do, but you're more than welcome to comment any other suggestions and recommendations or what you think would be helpful. So thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to check out any of my other links, will be in the description box down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye everyone.